Okay, councillors. Councillors, please rise. Almighty God, we pray for your blessing upon this council, help and prosper its work for the advancement and benefit of its people, so that peace and happiness, unity and justice may be established amongst us all. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Please be seated. Manningham City Council acknowledges the Warrandyte people as the traditional custodians of the land we now know as Manningham. We pay our respects to elders past and present and value the ongoing contribution to the cultural heritage of Manningham. I welcome all members of the public here tonight to the council meeting who have come along to observe proceedings. I would like to advise those present that tonight's meeting is being video recorded. All care will be taken to maintain your privacy. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, your presence may be recorded. By remaining in the gallery, it is assumed your consent is given to the event that your image is broadcast. I also recognise and welcome any previous mayors, councillors or members of Parliament here this evening. Manningham City Council also acknowledge the contribution made to Manningham over the years by people of diverse backgrounds and cultures. All council meetings are controlled by a meeting procedure local law. I will introduce each item of business as listed in the agenda by calling it by number and by reading the title. I will then call for a mover and seconder of a motion on the item before opening any debate. Only councillors are able to join the debate on an item. Councillors may adopt the officer's recommendation in the report or propose amendments and supplementary motions. I draw your attention to two opportunities for you to ask questions tonight. Verbal question time allows people who registered prior to the meeting to ask questions, but only about issues which are not on the agenda. Written questions are dealt with towards the end of the meeting, and these can be about any issue, including items on tonight's agenda. Item number 2, apologies and request for leave of absence.
Madam Mayor, I have received an apology from Councillor Goff for tonight's meeting.
Thank you. Item number 3, prior notification of conflict of interest.
Madam Mayor, there are no notifications of any conflict of interest.
Item number 4, confirmation of minutes. Do I have a mover? Councillor Zefropoulos. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Galbally. Councillor Zefropoulos.
Madam Mayor, I move that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Council held on 27 June 2017 be confirmed.
Thank you. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Zefropoulos? Councillor Galbally?
No, nothing for me.
Any speak against? Put that to a vote. All those in favour? Carried. Item number 5, verbal questions from the public.
There are no questions.
Item number 6, presentations.
Madam Mayor, there are no presentations.
Item number 7, 7.1, petition, Historical Church, 283 Springvale Road, Donvale, Mullum Ward. Do I have a mover?
Yeah.
Councillor Zefropoulos.
Okay, Madam Mayor, I move that the supplementary petition with 89 signatures requesting Council to save the historic church and hall at 283 Springvale Road, Donvale, be received and referred to the appropriate officer for consideration.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Chen. Councillor Zefropoulos, anything to add? Councillor Chen?
No.
Any speakers against? Put that to a vote. All those in favour? Carried. Item 7.2, petition, Warrandyte Bridge Development, Mullum Ward. Do I have a mover? Councillor McLeish.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the online petition with 138 supporters requesting Council to advocate on behalf of the community to the Minister for Roads and Road Safety for the Warrandyte Bridge development be received and referred to the appropriate officer for consideration.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Conlon. Councillor McLeish?
Nothing to add, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Conlon? Any to speak against? Put that to a vote. All those in favour? Carried. Item 8, items of urgent business.
Madam Mayor, there are no items of urgent business.
Item 9, planning permit applications. 9.1, planning application PL 16-02 6779 at 46 to 52 Brumbies Road, Warrandyte South, for use and development of land for agriculture, winery, residential hotel, liquor licence, removal of vegetation and reduction of car parking requirements. Do I have a mover? Councillor Galbally.
I move my councillor alternative recommendation.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Zephyropoulos. Councillor Galbally.
So the recommendation is that it reads that had an application for review against council's failure to determine the application within the prescribed time not been lodged, council would have issued a notice of decision to grant a permit subject to the following conditions. Now, that's all written and everyone has got a copy of it, so I won't read it all. And I would just enter into my points, please, Madam Mayor and fellow councillors. I'm putting forward an alternative recommendation which will exclude stage 2 of the applicant's initial proposal. I ask that only the stage 1 be considered as viable. Stage 1 would include the construction of all vehicle works, 40 hotel rooms, the event and dining space, the distillery, 57 car spaces, and of course with the agricultural areas to be completed before any works begin. By limiting this development to only one stage, the visual bulk and footprint on this site would be considerably reduced. This reduced size and bulk of development supports the officer's report when it states the scale of the proposal may be larger than what is required, and building only stage 1 with a 40-bed accommodation may be more realistic. This will be the first and very much needed residential hotel on the east of Manningham and of course in all of Warrandyte. This hotel will offer much needed accommodation for tourists, which in turn keeps the tourists in the area longer, who will then overflow to many local restaurants, wineries, retail shops, all benefiting and supporting these other businesses. It will boost the viability of our tourist trade, which in turn creates more jobs, not only the 100 or so jobs that will be directly hiring, but as other businesses get busier, they also too will be hiring more staff. This concept of a grappa distillery is also a first, not only for Manningham, but for Australia. An issue raised by objectors is how can this small vineyard produce enough produce for a distillery of grappa? Well, I asked that question too and discovered that 1 acre plus of vineyard will be more than adequate, as the process that they use is of the original method, which produces a much higher yield than making wine. I believe the uniqueness of this business with accommodation will be a destination for tourists and visitors to Warrandyte, and not only a gateway to the Yarra Valley wineries, which is where all the traffic down Warrandyte Ringwood Road are heading to. Bypassing Warrandyte and surrounding suburbs, and they do not have the opportunities for local employment other than retail and tourism, which we hold dear. This is a great draw card for our area. Sadly, I do not foresee another gold rush anytime soon, so our environment and natural open space along the Yarra corridor is worth sharing with the rest of the communities. About the concerns raised by objectors, firstly, the impact on our environment. The site at 4652 Brumby Road is relatively cleared of vegetation and appears to have been grazed in the past. This site has no vegetation that is protected under statewide provision at clause 52.17 that require any permission for removal, which makes it clear that this site will have a better example of local Indigenous plants and trees after the completion of this stage 1. The planting will also offer a screen of Indigenous trees and shrubs on all its boundaries, which will also give a buffer effect to the neighbours, specifically the orchid farm, who is not an objector, yet is the closest neighbour. All outdoor lighting will be LED lighting, which does not have high illumination, and all windows, walls and ceilings will be soundproofed. Environmentally, I'm content that this development will actually improve the local Indigenous vegetation in the area, which has seen erosion and bad management in the past. This site at completion will be a great example of how industry and our nature work well together. It is also in the interest of the applicant to create or recreate an Australian natural landscape for the visiting city dwellers. By limiting this development to a stage 1, the applicant has an opportunity to demonstrate the effectiveness and capacity of the proposed sewer treatment plant, and also provide evidence that Brumby Road can manage any increase in traffic of the smaller sized, only stage 1 development. And if in future he considers in moving ahead with stage 2 into the future, they would have to produce evidence of how this area can sustain any growth. And of course, they will be required to apply for a brand new permit.
Time.
Can I ask for extra time, please?
Do I have a mover for an extension of time? Councillor Conlon, a seconder. Councillor Haynes, all those in favour? Permission granted.
Thank you. And on fire safety, the CFA has requested the applicant to assume the guidelines and restrictions of the bushfire management overlay, although they're not in play yet. The applicant has met the BMO requirements and has also planned a fire shelter, which will be large enough to provide a defendable shelter not only for this site's patrons, but for any neighbour or person within reach. This indicates the applicant's knowledge of Warrandyte and the ever-present threat of bushfire. The CFA are very supportive of this shelter, which will provide a level of protection. So I hope I addressed my concerns to my fellow councillors. And as far as this development is concerned, and I hope that they recognise the benefits and the positive impacts on both Manningham's economic and environmental sustainability into the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Zephyropoulos?
I'd rather not add anything.
Nothing to add. Any speakers against? Councillor McLeish.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Whilst I appreciate the sentiments that are expressed in this particular motion before us, councillors, I'm afraid I have somewhat of a difficulty in even considering supporting it. And that difficulty is that I actually don't understand it. I don't understand it because of the limited amount of time we've had to consider it. Because I'm being asked as a councillor to interpret the plans that I've got before me, because the plans that I've got before me in the council papers and all of the plans that I've considered during the life of this application considered the entire application. They didn't consider part of it, they considered all of it. The community's consultation process that we've gone through again considered the entire proposal. The community concerns have been expressed in the context of all of the entire proposal. And I can't really personally contemplate approving a part of an application which the community hasn't had an opportunity to themselves consider and discuss. The community's opinion may well be different with a scaled down proposal, but we haven't had an opportunity to even consider that. The community certainly hasn't had an opportunity to consider that scale of application. What we're being asked to do, councillors, is to assess 10 or 11 pages worth of a conditional approval on a set of plans that are somewhat of a subset of what we see in our papers and what you've all seen, in the hope that in the last few hours you've managed to interpret all of that. And whilst I appreciate the sentiment and I appreciate that it's well intentioned, I don't believe we can, in all good faith, even consider approving this particular motion. Indeed, we don't even have a report from our officers contemplating the extent of the proposal we have before us. So as such, councillors, my suggestion is that we don't pass this particular motion because we're simply not well enough informed to form a considered view on it. And I think we would need to take a lot more advice and to see the real plans for what a scaled-back proposal would be before we could consider approving such a motion.
Any speakers for? Sum up, councillor.
Yeah, sure. Councillor McLeish has pointed out that basically what we were presented with, the whole plan was in two stages, stage 1 and stage 2. So it was quite a simple exercise just to be able to separate the stage 2 portion of this design. And the pages of conditional approvals are basically there and they are the adopted recommendations that were pointed out at the officers' report. So if you read the original officers' report that came back to us, most of those recommendations and restrictions are party to that, and they're interpreted from the officers' recommendations that if it was a 40-bed development, it would be more acceptable. And I did adopt a lot from that, and that is what is down there. So it really shouldn't be rocket science in trying to decipher stage 1 and stage 2 because it was pretty well spelled out in the report. I'm hoping that we sort of get at least the 40-bed one up because it is something that is very much in need, and I think it is a very good design, and there would be very limited impact on any residents because Brumbies Road, there are only two other places actually front onto Brumbies Road, and that can be addressed, and that's part of the recommendation works on that particular access point.
Time.
So I'll leave it all with you. Thank you.
Okay. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. So, lost, sorry. Lost. So now we go to...
First one.
Sorry. So lost. So then I'll go back to the officer alternate recommendation. I don't have to read the whole thing again, do I? No, didn't think so. So do I have a mover for the officer alternate recommendation? Councillor McLeish.
Madam Mayor, I move that the officer alternate recommendation be adopted.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Piccinini. Councillor McLeish.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think as a starting point, Madam Mayor, I'd like to make the observation that what we have at the end of Brumbies Road is a successful business in Olivinia. It's an award-winning business. It employs a lot of people. It's well received by many in our community. It's not necessarily that well received by some of the adjoining properties, but it is a successful and highly commendable business and employer within our community. And my concerns with this particular development don't reflect upon the proponent, they reflect upon the proposal. And it's the proposal that I have concerns with. The development is a hotel of 76 rooms, residential hotel, a distillery and grappa room for 40 people, reception and breakfast room for 80 people plus 20 outside, 2 event and dining spaces for a potential further 150 patrons, half a hectare of the 2.35 hectare site has been allocated to a vineyard, orchard and effluent dispersal area. 98 car parking spaces provided on the site. This is a substantial development. It's a very substantial development in the rural conservation zone, and that's where this is. It's in the green wedgeland in our city. It's on Brumbies Road. And Brumbies Road is quite an interesting little road. When you look at the report and try and understand what it is that is said about Brumbies Road, it's quite a challenge. Brumbies Road is a single lane, paved road, no formal footpaths. It meanders between the trees. It's quite narrow. And if you've read the report, you will see that the report tells us that it is not particularly conducive to what's proposed, which is a fairly significant increase in traffic. Traffic in the form of delivery trucks, in the form of patrons, in the form of coaches. These things that will impact the amenity of the adjoining properties and impact the amenity of this particular community. And if you read the conditions in the matter we just considered previously, you would note that it would have meant widening this road to a 5 metre wide road. Yet we have no plans for what that would mean. We would just be accepting that we would see this road widen to 5 metres. That's a real challenge for this particular community and a real change to the character of this particular precinct. Now, when we look at the planning policy that this is crafted under, it promotes new businesses where it does not affect the residential and environmental amenity. And I struggle to see how the proposal we have before us achieves that. This directly affects the environment, the residential amenity for the properties which adjoin it, for the local community. It's too large. The report tells us this proposal is too large to complement the landscape character or the rural living environment that we have in this particular area of the Green Wedge. It doesn't complement the purpose of the Green Wedge, the fundamental purpose of the Green Wedge. And that is a challenge for us as a council to consider this particular proposition. And indeed, the report also tells us the proposal does not minimise the adverse impacts on rural and scenic landscape features. That is due to the siting, the design, the scale, the height and the bulk of the building. These are all significant concerns, ladies and gentlemen, very significant concerns. The building straddles a ridgeline in one of the most sensitive locations in our community, where there are significant potential impacts upon the public realm and upon the public realm views. I greatly appreciate what this is trying to do. The problem is where it is. It isn't the right location for this particular proposal. It is far too significant for its current location. The residential amenity for the poor community which would be impacted by this particular development is significant. People have bought into this area for a quiet, semi-rural lifestyle. How is that going to be maintained if they are confronted with a 76-room hotel, 150-person function rooms, and all of the attendant car parking, noise, lighting, deliveries that will come with this particular proposal? I really don't see how this is going to be done. The traffic alone would be of a very significant challenge for this particular community, let alone all of the other concerns with this particular proposition. The report tells us that Brumbies Road exhibits the character of a rural laneway. In several areas of conflict, the pavement of this road is 3.5 metres wide, about half the length of this table. Conflict zones along the road in its current form. And are we going to see it widened? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Would you like an extension, Councillor?
I'll only be a moment. Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Haynes for an extension. Moved, seconded by Councillor Piccinini. Those in favour? Carried.
Thank you. The other key element of this particular proposition, Madam Mayor, is that it's being proposed under the in conjunction test, and that's a matter where, if I have it correct, and I'll ask the Director of Planning Environment to correct me if I make a mistake in this, because it's quite technical, but it's about the opportunity to have such a development in conjunction with a rural use, such as a vineyard or orchard of some sort, and you utilise that development of the vineyard or orchard in conjunction with the physical facility that you're building. And the problem we have here, of course, is that the in conjunction test is quite a challenge. We're talking about, as I understand it, about 1,000 square metres is proposed for cultivation. 1,200 square metres, I'm sorry, 1,200 square metres is proposed for cultivation. So that is a fairly small area. It's around 5%, I think, of the development of the proposed site would be available, because it's a 23,500 square metre proposition. So it's a pretty small area to have under agriculture. And of course, quite how that relates to a 76-bed hotel and a 150-person function space is, to me, quite a challenge. I can see how it relates to the Grappa distillery, but for the rest, the scale of these two things really doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And whilst I appreciate that there is a great capacity for this site in conjunction with Olivinia, that's not what we're considering.
Time.
We have to consider this particular proposal in its own context, and that's it.
Time.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I would ask you to support the officer recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Piccinini, anything to add?
Nothing further to add.
Any speakers against? Councillor Galbley.
Just to clarify, because I've already had my little speech, I suppose. Just to clarify a couple of things that Councillor McLeish wasn't aware of or asked the question. There's actually just over an acre of vines and 1,000 square metres of orchard. And with that, as I explained in my first little speech, that the distillery of Grappa does not require the capacity or the number of grapes that it is needed in winemaking. So it's quite substantial as far as a Grappa distillery. Not that I'm an expert, but that's what I've been led to believe. I think I've sort of said most of what I needed to say, that the in conjunction test, that can be tested easily by and passed by planting before any development happens. So it would be quite reasonable to expect that over an acre of this land, when there's only 5 acres on the land, and it's quite a reasonable scale. And I suppose I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay. In summing up, Councillor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I thank the good councillor for the correction. She is indeed correct. Page 2, top of page 2, it tells you the number of square metres. 4,000 square metres for vines and 1,000 square metres for the orchard. In the end, I'm not going to repeat my argument. I've made it. It's a creditable proposal from the owner of this particular site. I just think it's in the wrong location and it's far too substantial for this community. It would need to be in a different place where it is further removed from its neighbours and has a less significant impact on the local environment and community.
Okay, I'll put that to a vote. Those in favour? And those against? Carried. (9.2) Planning application PL 16-026654 at 1 Elizabeth Street, Doncaster East, for the construction of a building providing 6 dwellings, 5 three-storey dwellings and 1 two-storey dwelling. Do I have a mover? Councillor Haynes.
I move that the alternative recommendation be adopted.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Chen. Councillor Haynes.
Thank you. This application is a major increase in the yield of what is acceptable on a single house block of 866 square metres in this residential zone. 6 homes are too many for it. A previous application on the site was for 4 and it didn't go ahead. People think we don't care, and I hear many stronger words than those said. But this report on 8.26 states that the DD08 recommends two-storey. Incremental change is appropriate for development. I have to disagree strongly that 6 homes, which are all joined together, replacing one in this area is acceptable. This would set an unacceptable precedence and could open the door to this being the new normal if considered for approval. Parking is always an issue, especially in and around this street, and with the restrictions that are not enforced, and having developments with 16 bedrooms and 1 visitor parking would make it worse for all and place an unnecessary burden on the existing residents. We need to consider the local people who live around this site. Amenity for all needs to have a greater weight when considering this development. Putting up 6 homes on an 866 metre block in this precinct lacks consideration for the community. All of these factors and more need to be considered, and I ask that as councillors, we have been put in our position to do all we can to help make a balanced, informed decision. And we need to care, and we need to listen. Councillors, this is an obvious overdevelopment in my view and on this property, and I ask that as councillors we decide to refuse this development, and I ask for your support.
Thank you. Councillor Chen.
Yes, Madam Mayor. Councillor Haynes have given a lot of good, sound reasons for why the proposal should be rejected, the development should be rejected. I just wish to add one more, perhaps not the part of the reason of the planning scheme, but in terms of the community health safety issue. As we all know that there are many international studies that about the emissions from petrol stations that contain compounds harmful to health and to human safety. As we all know that this property abuts to a petrol station, and there appears no buffer zone between this particular site and the petrol station. That is why my main reason to reject these particular developments. Thank you.
Okay. Any speakers to speak against the motion? Councillor, would you like to sum up?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just one further thing to add that I don't think I did mention was that these are considered to be 5 three-storey houses all joined together, and there is no 3-storey homes within the whole of that zone and within the whole of that area. So just wanting to add that to my submission. Thank you.
My bad. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Carried. Yes. Okay. So, items 10.1. Amendment C113. Heritage overlay changes, including Warrandyte South Hall, consideration of panel report and approval. Do I have a mover? Councillor Piccinini.
I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Seconder? Councillor McLeish. Councillor Piccinini.
Madam Mayor, this motion seeks that we adopt Amendment C113 to our planning scheme, as recommended by the panel report dated the 19th of June. And in essence, this amendment proposes that we permit the Warrandyte South Hall to be considered for community uses while still remaining on the Heritage Register. And it also recommends that we correct about 6 or 7 anomalies and errors to properties that are on the register.
Thank you. Councillor McLeish.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just pleased to see this particular amendment come forward. It's great to see this particular hall is going to finally have its long and complex planning history unravelled in a manner that will allow us to make more effective use of a lovely historic asset. So it's great to see it coming forward.
Any speakers against?
I would like to seek clarification, Madam Mayor, please.
Councillor Chen.
If I may. I would like to seek clarification from the Director of Planning, please. If the heritage overlay is to be removed from number 47 Smith Road, suppose there is any further developments on 47, what measure will be in place to protect the heritage overlay status for number 49 Smith Road, please?
I might have to get you to repeat the numbers. So you're talking about 2 different sites? Sorry for that clarification.
Yes. And 49 have a heritage overlay, and 47 has heritage overlay as well. And the panel decision is to remove 47 from the heritage overlay. And my question is, 47 has already been built, the 2 stories new building in the year 2009. If the heritage overlay is removed from 47 Smith Road, in the future, if there's any further development on that particular site, what measure will be in place to protect the heritage overlay status on 49 Smith Road, please?
Which is the one next to which is,
Exactly.
There wasn't a recommendation, so there would be that protection in place. That stays.
Because I remember that the heritage advisor recommended that that should not be removed in case there is any further development on 47, and that will put a potential impact on 49. I'm just a bit concerned that if we adopt the panel's decision to remove heritage overlay from 47, will that be an impact on 49? I just need to...
It will not be an impact. Now that I clarified, it will not be an impact.
Thank you. Okay, I'll put that to a vote. Those in favour? Against? Carried. Item 10.2, Amendment C120 to the Manningham Planning Scheme, 7 Aminga Avenue, Doncaster East, request for authorisation. Mover, Councillor Piccinini.
I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor McLeish. Councillor Piccinini.
Madam Mayor, this motion refers to a single block of land which is located at 7 Aminga Avenue, Doncaster East, and the motion seeks that we authorise the Minister to prepare an amendment to our planning scheme to resolve that this block of land is rezoned to the general residential zone and removed from the design and development overlay, which will be in keeping with the other properties on this block, in this area.
Thank you. Councillor McLeish.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, this is a complex one, councillors, but in the end what we have is a property on the corner. It abuts 3 neighbouring properties, and those 3 properties have a particular zoning, and this one doesn't. It sits there in isolation from its 3 neighbouring properties. And what this seeks to do is to give it the same zoning as the properties that abut it, whilst preserving the remaining blocks in that street, the zoning of the remaining blocks in the street. So it simply changes just one block. yes, this particular amendment will potentially change the value of this particular block of land, but at least the neighbours to the south and to the west, as those properties develop in the zone that they are currently in, this particular property will be able to develop in exactly the same context. And the different zone will be across the street on the other side of the road. And it has been typical of council where we try and have zone transitions across street boundaries. It's the best place for them because the different treatments that are available in the different properties with that different zone actually don't impact as heavily on each other because they have the street as a buffer. So I think this is a logical and sensible change for this particular property, and it's an isolated change. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any speakers against? Councillor Conlon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It concerns me that this is another, I guess, a path to overdevelopment potentially. We still have not resolved how we are managing parking in these streets, particularly these streets along here that we're talking about, and that's just, in my mind, we should be delaying approval of changes to zoning until we can sort out the parking issues, which I believe is going to be on a future agenda, and I hope that is. So that's one of my main reasons. The other one is in terms of that particular avenue, which is actually a quarter or a cul-de-sac or whatever, looks like. I believe that it should be in keeping with the other blocks that are in that street and it should maintain its current zoning. Thank you.
Thank you. Sum up, Councillor. Oh, sorry. Any speakers for?
Can I speak against, or you have to be?
No, need to be speaker for. Okay, to sum up.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, in reply to the objection, this is a motion that it goes to a panel hearing. So there'll be an opportunity for residents to object to the proposal that the zoning be changed, and this process takes many months, as we know, the comment made that we are going to look at in more detail our planning scheme and consider car parking, etc. They can both run in tandem. So, in reply to those comments, and it's a single property which abuts two properties that are in a different zone. So, in terms of equity and fairness, for this one property to be singled out in this way, it's arguably unfair to that resident.
I'll put that to a vote. Those in favour? Against? Lost. Item 10.3, Draft Domeney Reserve Management Plan Endorsement for Public Exhibition. Do I have a mover? Councillor McLeish.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll try and be brief. Very pleased to see this particular development, this particular management plan coming forward for public exhibition and comment. It's been some time since we reviewed the management plan for this particular reserve, and we are considering making some investments in this particular reserve to enhance the facilities. And this is an opportune time for us as a council to review the strategic plan we have for the reserve, make sure we understand its current and future uses and likely future uses, and ensure that we have consulted with our community on how we think it may develop. We've done that already through some initial consultation as to the nature of what the plan might contain. We've now drafted a plan, and we are taking that draft plan out to the community for further consultation. And I look forward to hearing in detail from our community about what lies within the plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Conlon.
I will second that. And I'd just like to endorse what Councillor McLeish has said, and I'm looking forward to hearing community comments regarding the proposed plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Any speakers against? I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Carried. Item 11, Assets and Engineering. 11.1, BTYC Gymnastics Indoor Stadium Pricing Review. Do I have a mover? Councillor Conlon?
I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor McLeish. Councillor Conlon?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to endorse the good report that we've had from the officers in this particular case that's tried to provide a fair, equitable, consistent and transparent process for determining the fee of the BTYC Gymnastics Indoor Stadium. And I would just, while it's not detailed in the report, there is still significant subsidy by way of depreciation of this building, which is embedded, and I'm sure the council in another 20, 30 years when they rebuild this site will have to consider. But in general, I think it's a step in the right direction in terms of ensuring that users pay a fair rate and that the community subsidises at a fair rate. Thank you.
Councillor McLeish.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm pleased to rise to speak to this particular matter. It's great to see the diligent and yet difficult work of the staff of this organisation coming to the table in this form. Working on pricing issues with our stadiums is a very complex and difficult matter, and to take stakeholders along the journey with you and have a supported outcome is a great reflection upon the hard work of the officers in delivering this. I'm pleased to see this is going to be a balanced and equitable outcome where council sees a reasonable portion of its costs offset, and this particular organisation that's very successful and is very capably delivering gymnastics to not only the youth of Manningham but many other people beyond the borders of Manningham are going to continue to be supported in their use of one of our busy facilities at the DISC, the Donvale Indoor Sports Centre.
Thank you. Any speakers against? Put that to a vote. All those in favour? Carried. Item 11.2, 2016-2017 Capital Works Program End of June Status Report. Do I have a mover? Councillor Conlon.
I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Piccinini. Councillor Conlon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to point out that the great work that the Capital Works Department, Assets and Engineering, through Lee Harrison, is achieving their budget and proceeding along the lines of what was approved in our budget in terms of capital expenditure. And I'd like to encourage all the council officers and workers for their great work in getting these important capital works done and in a timely manner and on budget. Thank you.
Councillor Piccinini.
Nothing further to add.
Any speakers against? Put that to a vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. I'd like to remind the people in the gallery that we will be clearing the questions box shortly. Please submit any questions you may have in the next few minutes. I would also stress that I will deal with a maximum of 2 questions per person. If you have more than 2 questions, please submit these additional questions in writing to the Council through normal channels. Community Services, item 12.1, Headspace Outreach Program in Manningham. Mover, Councillor Piccinini.
I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Zephyropoulos. Councillor Piccinini.
Madam Mayor, Headspace, as you know, is the National Youth Mental Health Foundation, providing early intervention mental health services to our youth. That is, people aged between 12 and 25. For young people in Manningham, their local Headspace facility is based in Hawthorn, which is a long way away. The proposed MOU, which is attached to our council papers, is between the council. It's also and Access Health and Community, which is the provider of headspace for our area, and the YMCA in Manningham. This is an exciting new development for Manningham and our youth. The funds raised at the mayoral ball, together with the raffle, will fund the headspace outreach service in Manningham for a period of 12 months. Our youth won't have to travel by bus into Hawthorn, and many of the youth that do attend Headspace don't tell their parents that they're attending, so it makes it even more easier for them to use this facility. What this will also do is it'll provide an opportunity for our youth services, the YMCA youth services, to build connections and referral pathways with Headspace, which will enhance that service. It's a great initiative, and we see that in the MOU, the intention is that that the outreach service will continue beyond the 12 months following an evaluation. It's a much needed service in this area, and I encourage everyone to buy a ticket to the raffle. And the ball, yes, of which the mayor has many raffle tickets to sell. Yeah.
This sounds very much like an ad.
On behalf of Kiwanis.
Yes.
Thanks to them. Councillor Zefropoulos.
I think Councillor Petition covered just about everything I would like to say. This is a common sense initiative, and it's a very cost-effective one. It will not cost council any money at all, and it has the capacity, if the demand increases, as we understand, that we will be able to then apply to Commonwealth agencies to sustain the program beyond the 12 months that we'll be able to raise funds through the ball and some of the raffle activities. It's rather interesting, again, once again we find that the city of Manningham is deprived from a number of services, and here is another example. People have to travel outside of Manningham to be able to get clinical mental health services. So this is a good initiative. It's a good collaboration between the three agencies, the YMCA and the council, and I endorse it.
Thank you. Any speakers against? I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Carried. Item 14, Chief Executive Officer 14.1, 2017 Local Government Community Satisfaction Survey Results. Mover, Councillor Zefropoulos.
Yes, I'd like to move the recommendation.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Chen. Councillor Zefropoulos.
Madam Mayor, this is the 20th year that this local government community satisfaction survey has been conducted, and I can report with some pride that our council has done well. We scored a score of 67, which is 2 points better than last year. We've done well in 5 of the indicators, but we have not done well in relation to 2 of them. I'll expand a little bit on this. The areas that need attention, and we have taken care of those areas I think in our council plan, are consultation and engagement, community satisfaction in council decisions, and sealed local roads. All those 3 issues we have recognised as needing further attention and further improvement, and our plan, I think, will cater for those. I'd like to point out that the areas that we appear to not have done very well, and in particular community consultation worries me a little bit because we dropped from last year about 4 points. Community consultation is very important for a council to ensure that we engage and listen to our community, and it worries me a little bit that we have dropped a significant number of points in relation to that issue. It's vitally important for council to build trust and community confidence, and our decision-making has to appear to be transparent and accountable, and on the basis of the survey, it seems that we have some room for improvement.
Any speakers against? Oh, sorry, Councillor Chen. Sorry, Councillor Chen.
Nothing further to add, Madam Mayor.
Any speakers against? I'll put that to a vote. Those in favour? Carried. 14.2 Advisory Committee Policy. Do I have a mover? Councillor Chen.
Madam Mayor, I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you. A seconder? Councillor Piccinini. Councillor Chen.
Yes, Madam Mayor. Council established advisory committees under the Local Government Act to provide advice to council, special committees, and delegated staff. This policy would provide consistent framework for the establishment, operation, and review of the advisory committees. Community representatives are to be appointed for 3 years and for a maximum of 3 terms, totaling 9 years. I know that the policy makes reference to Equal Opportunity Act 2010. The purpose of the Act is to strengthen Discrimination Act in Victoria and to encourage the identification, elimination of discrimination, and provide equality. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything to add, Councillor Piccinini?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay. I'll put that to a vote. Those in favour? Against? Carried. 14.3, Review Risk Management Strategy and Risk Management Policy 2017. Do I have a mover? Councillor McLeish.
Madam Mayor, I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Seconder? Do I have a seconder?
Oh, it was you.
Councillor Zafiropoulos. Councillor McLeish?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm pleased to advise, Madam Mayor, that this particular strategy and policy have both been considered by the Audit Committee and supported wholeheartedly by the independent members of the Audit Committee. I'm pleased to see that the growing maturity and capability of our organisation in risk management is being reflected in the embedded consideration of risk by the executive and wider organisation, and the implementation of better tools to assist them with that, and the review of this policy reflects that growing maturity. So it's great to see this particular matter coming forward.
Councillor Zafiropoulos, anything to add?
Yes, I'd like to point out that risk management has become very important to all organisations if they wish to ensure that their operations are run in a way that anticipates a risk. And here at Manningham we have a management strategy that has got 3 distinct levels. One of the levels is system control, management control rather. The second one is compliance monitoring, and the third one is an independent review by the Audit Committee that I also belong, like Councillor McLeish, and I'm very happy that the way we manage risk at Manningham is very wise and anticipates possible problems.
Okay. Any speakers against? All right, put that to a vote. Those in favour? Carried. 14.4, Strategic Risk Register Report to Council 6-month period ending 30th of June 2017. Do I have a mover? Councillor McLeish.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move the recommendation be adopted.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Haynes. Councillor McLeish.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The risk register is also being reviewed. It's a 6-month review of the risk register. It reports to council about that review. The review is in the context of the revised risk management strategy and policy, which we've just discussed. And the whole point of this is having our key strategic risks identified so that they are documented, recorded, and then directly contemplated by the organisation as they manage the business. If you don't contemplate the risk of doing something, you may not actually invest in the treatment plan, which will mitigate that risk. And it's important for an organisation to contemplate these risks and ensure that they have treatment plans that are adequate to the significance of the risk. And this particular register, it has been considered by the Audit Committee and it received the wholehearted support of the independent and council members of that committee.
Thank you. Councillor Haynes.
Just to add that I'm really grateful that we've got officers and strategic risk people that put all this together. It's something that doesn't warm my heart well as to sitting down to those types of meetings, but it's been very good to see that it's always happening and that these reports are essential to the running of this council. And I ask that we receive that report.
Thank you. Any speakers against? Put that to a vote. Those in favour? Carried. 14.5, Record of Assembly of Councillors. Do I have a mover? Councillor Conlon.
I move the recommendation be adopted.
Seconder? Councillor Piccinini. Councillor Conlon.
Yeah. Why not? What a joy it is to meet every Tuesday night with you guys. Thank you very much.
Councillor Piccinini.
Nothing to add.
Any speakers against?
Oh, I'd love to, but no.
I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Wonderfully passed. 14.6, documents for sealing. Do I have a mover?
Yes, I'd like to move
Councillor Galbally.
Yes, I'd like to move that the recommendation be adopted with the addition of the following agreement. Consent agreement to build over an easement, section 173 of the Planning Environment Act 1987, Council and ex Macri and A Macri and A Pangalos, 6 Soderland Drive, Doncaster.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Piccinini. Councillor Galbally. Anything to add?
Nothing to add.
Councillor Piccinini.
Nothing to add.
Okay. Any speakers against? All those in favour? Carried. Item 15, urgent business.
Madam Mayor, there are no items of urgent business.
Item 16, written questions from the public.
There are no questions.
Item 17, councillor question time. Any questions, councillors? Item 17, confidential reports. There are none. That being said, the meeting is closed.
Thank you.